All right, so today's project is going to be Hangman. As you can see, I've already downloaded the images that I was going to use. They're these terrible images that I made for this purpose. Go ahead and extract them and look at my, let's see, am I missing a leg? I'm missing, I got 2 legs. Okay, so I got 1, 2, 3, 6. I got 7 images. So I'm going to put them in my, I'm going to use these images to display based on how many wrong guesses the person has. I've got a list of common words that they'll use to guess. Basically we'll choose one of these words randomly. Now this is a CSV file. A CSV file is comma separated values. You can open in Excel. It'll open in columns. You can also open with, I will open it with Notepad because I don't have Excel installed. But as you can see, it's simply a bunch of lines, and each line has the same thing on it. It has a number, a word, and then a description of what kind of word it is. And what I'll do is I'll load these in. I'll read these out of the file and use them and choose one of them randomly, right? So that's the basic idea of what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and get started. So I will create a new project, and I will do a Windows Forms project because that's really what we know about. Call it something like Hangman, perhaps. All right, and I note where it is because this is going to be important to me. It's in Visual Studio 2013 projects. I'm going to want to actually put the file, my comma separated values, in that subdirectory, in one of the subdirectories, which I'll show you later. So, and what you want to get used to is when you have a project, as your projects are now getting larger, you want to start to do them in parts. That is, figure out how to do a little part of the project before moving on, right? So one of the things we're going to want for this is we're going to want all those pictures, right? So let me see if I go to properties. So I right click and I go to properties, and then I go to resources, and what I want to do is add those resources, add those images. So I'm going to right click. If I click add, it's going to let me actually create an image, but what I want to do is add an existing file. So I have to click on the little arrow, add existing file, and then recall that I had put those images that I had gotten off of Laulima, for those of you in my class, and I will do a multi-select on these, and then I'll click open, and then it will automatically load all these into my resources. So now these are items that I can access from my form as resources, which means I don't have to necessarily load them or do anything with them. So now the first thing I want to do is make sure that process worked. So so let's go ahead, and I will use a image, a picture box, right? And now that I have the image loaded, the resources loaded, I can actually select it over here. If I go over here, you can see actually it's and you can see how the high quality of my artwork. And you can see it only selects a portion of the image, right? And that's because the image is too large. The image I created is too large for this little tiny image. So what I can do is I can change one of the properties of the image to be, let's see, is it auto stretch? Where is it? Often I forget the names of these properties, but a size mode. There's size mode, which is normal, which means it's going to, be whatever size it is. But we want to change that to stretch image. which will now resize it, based on how big it is. So you go something like this. But if I change the, you can see I can actually change the dimensions of it, and it will stretch the image based on that, which can negatively impact your image depending on what it is. Obviously, with my artwork, not as important. So let's go ahead and change this form name to something a little more descriptive. Oh, got my cap lock on. All right. And for those of you, who are not familiar with Hangman. Hangman is basically a word guessing game. The person randomly chooses a word, and then you guess letters, and each letter they fill out if that letter's in the word. So you have basically a lot of blank spaces, and as you guess the word, you can think of it like Wheel of Fortune. So Wheel of Fortune, you guess a letter, and if the letter's there, it opens it up. So, okay, so now I have an image. I'm displaying an image, but let's go ahead and add a button. And so there's different things I could use to get input from the users. I could use a text box. As it turns out, it might be nice for the user just to have a bunch of buttons, each one with a single letter on it that they can click on, right? So each button is going to have a single letter, and like A. And so what I suggest you do is put an A on there, and then adjust the font to get it to be something that's easy. We're going to call this like CMD A maybe. We're actually going to have 26 buttons, but so now I want to go to the font, and let's adjust the font. And I want to adjust the font right away, because if I do this, if I get the font I want, I like Times New Roman. It's a thing with me. If I adjust this font right from the beginning, that one's a little too big, I think. Too big. Let's try 36. Okay, still too big. You can see it's, well, that's huge, right? Way too big. All right, let's try something more reasonable. Maybe 26. All right. Even that seems pretty big. Go back down to 20. And then, let's see. Text align is middle center. I'm going to put it at the top. So I've changed the align to top center. Maybe I should put it middle. I got 2 words on here. Let's check. Middle center. Let me do instead corner, top left. And you can see what's happening is the text is adjusting to different positions. I still think the font's probably a little too big. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting this button to look right, because what I'm going to do is copy this button a whole bunch of times. Even that looks kind of big. When I start to make the other buttons, and they'll be exactly the same as this. So if I get it to look nice on the first button, it'll make it easier when I go to make the other buttons. Okay? And that's close enough. All right. So now if I wanted to make another button, I could copy this button. And I can do a paste, and you can see it's going to have an A on it, but it's going to have the same basic properties. That is, the font will be the same, and that sort of thing. So, but obviously what I don't want is to have the same text. Oops, I gotta select my button. And the text should be a B, right? So I have a couple buttons. And now what I'm going to want is I'm going to want all these buttons to share the same click event, the click handler. So let's go ahead and create an event handler. I'll double click on this A button, which will automatically generate this handler and associate it with my button A. And you're like, wait a second, how can I associate multiple items with the same button? And it's surprisingly easy. Excuse me, multiple buttons with the same event. And it's easy. But you can't always have that work for you. In this case, these are the actions performed by these buttons are going to be very similar. The difference is going to be just the text, the item that I search for when I'm guessing. If I guess A versus guessing B, right? So what I want to do then is to change this event handler. So I go to events and click, and I can actually select CMD's A's click event, which means now both of these now will run this code, whatever it is. Now, if that's the case, I probably don't want to call it CMD A click. So what I can do is I can refactor this. So when I want to change the name of something, I can do this sort of refactoring. Let's see, refactor, rename. And what this is going to do for me is any reference to this, it's going to update that name there. So this will mean that if I go look at the code that associates this event with A and B button, it will also change. And it lets me actually see where it's going to make changes. And you can see this is backwards associating this to these two buttons, right? And this actually happens already when you change items. If I were to change the name of this to something else, it's going to have to do the same thing in the code. It'll actually go back and figure out where button 1 was referenced, and it'll change it to, say, CMDB. So it'll update that in the code for me as well. So it's the same sort of thing it's doing there. All right, so now I have a couple buttons. What I want to see happen is each wrong guess, I want to have the image change. So I want this image to, as I have one guess, it should have the head, the second guess, the body, and so forth. So to get that effect, one way to do it, and we've talked a lot about arrays, so I can create an array. I'll give it a access modifier of private, and it will be an array of strings, and I will call it, hang images, maybe something like that. And then I will use the initializer ability of an array. And what I want is the resource. Let's see, resources. Remember how to do this. So now I have to remember how to. Oh, actually, I know where to look. So I'm trying to remember how to Hangman properties resources. How to reference a resource, and it's the name of the. So I'm looking here, which I set this to one of the resources. So I'm looking here, and it's Hangman properties resources hang one. Right. So in my array here, I can start with Hangman dot properties dot resources dot hang one, right? And I want to put them in order in this array. The reason I want them in order is so that I can have an index that indicates how many guesses there were, and I'll change the number of guesses when they get it wrong. What's it complaining about here? Let's double check this. Oh, that's I've said this is a bunch of strings. That was silly. This should be images. Let's see. Is it? This is a bit. Is it a bitmap? Terrible. Okay, it likes that. All right, so a lot of times the messages can be quite useful. I will tell you what's wrong with your code and why. So I'm going to try to keep this at least on this page. So this will be hang 2, and then I'll go down to the next one. Hang 3, comma, oops, jumped too soon. Hang 4. Type. Oh, I forgot my comma up here. All right. Then a comma. Again. We'll change this to hang 5. Hang 6. Comma. And then finally hang 7. Right? All right. Let's go ahead and save that. So now I have this array of the images. And really this array is just pointing to images that are resources. But what I want now is I want something to keep track of the number of bad guesses I have. And I don't even know how to figure out it's a bad guess yet. But what I want to do is build this project kind of in parts. So I want to do this in steps so I kind of know what I'm getting myself into. So I need to keep track of the number of guesses. So what type of information is that? That's going to be some sort of integer, a counting number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I should probably name it something that indicates what it is, like wrong guesses, right? And it's going to start at 0, right? Because initially they'll have 0 wrong guesses. So, which, if you think about it, hang 1 here, which has no head or anything on it, hang 2 adds the head. So what I want to have happen is, if I get a wrong guess, I'm going to increment wrong guesses, like that. Then what I want is I need to change the image to match the fact that this image now should have a little head on it. So each time I click a guess, and right now I'm going to do it for every time because I can't tell if it's right or wrong, it should change the image one more, right? So the property I need to change is the image property, right? So, and the name of this picture box is picture box 1. I could change that to something more meaningful. You know, like, and then let's go back to my code behind here. And hang image, and I want to assign that a value from my hang images array, and the index for that is going to be my wrong guesses, which will be some sort of number, right? Now, can you think of any problems that would occur with wrong guesses if I were to keep running this code? Well, let's take a look. And one of the things I want to do is incrementally run my code. So I want to keep adding to my code, test it, and that's why I like to get a little bit of an idea going, then be able to test it. So let's take a look, see if I can run this without crashing. All right, so if I hit this, it changes, it changes, it changes, it changes, it changes, it changes. Uh-oh. Index out of range. So what happens is when it gets to 7, if wrong guesses gets to 7, it's going to crash. Which, if wrong guesses gets to 7, what does that mean? Well, it means I lost the game. And I know we didn't, in class I did this at the very end, but I'm going to go ahead and do this right here. I'm going to say if wrong guesses is less than 7, then I'll do this. Right? And then I'll add an else, which, if wrong guesses is 7, that means that I failed to guess in the prerequisite number of guesses. So why don't I go ahead, and I didn't do this way till the end in class, but I'll go ahead and add this here, and I'll call it maybe, as my virtual machine gets persnickety, I'll call it label result, like so, and it's not going to be real fancy. You know, when you get things running, then you can decide how to fancy it up. Right? So I know that label is there, and so what I'll do is I will change that label result dot something like this. So now it won't blow up when I get too many wrong guesses. It'll just add that label. It'll add text to that label, change that label's property. So let's test that. And we have, uh-oh, something went wrong, right? Immediately said you lose. That's not good. That's not good. Wrong guesses. Let's see here. What did I do? Wrong guesses equals 0. Plus plus. Is greater than... Oh. No. So, wrong guesses, as long as it's less than 7, I don't know why I put greater than. As long as it's less than 7, it'll come in here, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if it's not, if it's 7, then it's going to do a you lose. All right. Let's try that again. Body, arms, legs, I lose. I don't know if I should lose when I get the leg added. I don't know. We'll just leave it the way it is. So should I add the last image as you lose? Or is that the point where they hang you? I don't know. Okay, so I've got that basic part working now, and that's the process you want to go through, is get one little piece working and then move on to the next. All right, so now my next problem is that I want to load the words. So I'm going to need a method to oops. Somebody's complaining about some load. I got my cap locks on. Load rods. All right. Words. All right. Now I could make this a little more. I could give it a parameter like the file, but I'm just going to hard code that for now. But what you want to know is eventually, to have a flexible game, you want to be able to load different word lists. We're not going to do that. Now the question is, what should it return? Well, if we're just going to load the words, let's just go ahead and make it return a void. But if we're going to load the words, we need some place to put them. So let's go ahead and create something to hold them. Now, what type of information are words? Well, string, right? They are a string, and then I want to, let's see, but I have a whole bunch of them. So it's an array. So I want an array, and I can call this words. But I don't know, I can't create the array yet because I don't know how big it is, right? So I'm kind of stuck there with that. But now I want to load the words. And to load the words, we know that we talked about the fact that they're going to be in a file. So I'm going to have to read in the file. But let's go look at the file right now. So we looked at this common words, and we know it's a comma separated volume. So let's go ahead and copy this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this into my Visual Studio project for this game. And I'm going to go inside and put it in my bin debug, and put it right here. That way I don't have to include path information. So it's called Common Words 2. So now, though, I'm like, okay, that's great, but I have to figure out how to read that file. So if you don't know how to read files, what do? You come out here and you say C#. And I actually did give you a couple hints on how to read the files. Let's see, read CSV file C#. So you want to work on your Google Foo. Oh, I got C# twice. Let's see. Storing into array. That sounds very good, right? Sounds about right. So now, if you're doing a homework assignment or something, you don't want to steal someone's homework assignment, but you might want to do a. You have like one line that you need, like you have one thing you need to do. It's okay to look that up. You can look it up in the documentation if you need to, right? So it turns out that, and even if you then say, hey, I'm going to go actually look at the raw documentation for read all text, that's fine. But something like this might be useful. Give you an idea, right? So, and if you want, let's see, we can do this. We go File, All New Text. Let's do this. And you can go to the MSDN documentation for this. There you go. And not the nicest example there, is it? Let's see if it has. There we go. A little better. Static path. There we go. So, for instance, here's an example of a path. It checks to see if the path exists. Make sure the file is there. Ends all text, and then it reads all the text. Now, read all text actually is going to read it into a big block of text. And what you'll see is you're probably better off saying that I want something that we saw earlier, read all lines. That'll break it up into the separate lines that are there into an array, right? So here, this line here actually does that very thing. It reads all the lines in the file path. Now, I think I have to include a indicate that I'm going to use system.io, perhaps. Let's take a look. That's a namespace. Let's see. So there. So file is in the library namespace system.io. So I had to add this to get that to work. But now I have this path. Well, it turns out that I have placed the file so it doesn't need a path. I just need the file name. So I need the common words. And I can actually hard code the path name here. There are many ways to get a path name, which you'll learn some later. You can have the user give you the name and get the file from there. So then this load words will actually read all the words. Now, of course, it's not going to do that unless I actually call the method. So the next thing, again, I want to do things incrementally. So I will double click here, which the default event for a form is actually form load. So what I want form load to do is to actually call this load words. And then it will call load words. But you're like, wait a second, that's great, but I'm not doing anything with this, nor do I display it in any way. So how do I know if it read the file or not? Well, one, if it didn't crash, that's probably a good sign. So I can test that. The other thing I can do is I can set a breakpoint. And I'll show that in a second. Let's see. You can see here, this is kind of a handy thing here. If we were working on a console, I could actually print out all the lines, but we're not. We're on a form. But this loop will be kind of handy in a moment, because what I want to do is walk that entire, all those strings, go through all those strings. And let's, for now, I'll leave it there, but I'll set a breakpoint here. So this is a breakpoint. You see this? I go to the little gray bar here and I can click the breakpoint. If I run start now, if it ever comes across this line of code, it will stop right there. Let's see, is that going to be a problem? Might be. It might actually do this for each one of those strings, but we'll see. So if I look at my file again quickly, my CSV file here, and let me close that, and open it up, I can get a guess as to how many, since they all have a number next to them, it turns out there are 2,265 of them. So 2,265. So that means that if I run this code, hopefully I have an array that's been created that's got 2,265 items in it, which will be all the lines in that file. So I can stop it there, and then I'll show you that I can actually look to see how many things have been loaded. So it did stop there. That's a good sign. And you can see here, read text. So these are local variables that I can see the values of. I can also mouse over items here and do the same sort of thing. So if I don't have my locals watch up, which I can get, I believe, under here, view locals. Let's see. I think it's here someplace. We'll come back to that. But if it's not there, look under view. And you can see here it's telling me I'm stopped right here. Well, that's all I wanted to know, right? I wanted to know, did you actually read those in? And it did, and it looks like they're in there. So that's good. And again, we're doing this incrementally, trying to do this step by step, right? Okay, but now I have my words, but I don't have words. If you look closely, you will notice that these are not, what I really want is the, of, I want those, not the one, not the definitive article, adverb. I want that middle part. So it turns out that there are a lot of methods available to you from the library, right? And one of those is the split, right? So the string has a lot of methods available to you. But the first thing I need, right, I have to actually create an array of the right size. So I have my words, and I want to assign it to some sort of empty array, right? So it'll be new, which is a keyword to create new memory, and then it's a string, and then I have to know how many I want to create. Well, it turns out arrays also have a property which will tell me how many there are. Now that I've read them in, read text dot length will tell me how many items are in that. So what I'm going to do is take this read text and read it in, and then create a new array for just the words. So now I have the words aren't there yet. What I need to do is leave, walk this list of items, and add them to words one at a time. Okay, so one, I have to figure out how to get just the word I want. And two, I'm going to have to figure out what item I'm on. So what I can do is have a little counter. And if I wanted to, I could have done, instead of doing this fancy loop, I could have done a standard for loop for the number of items in the length of the list. But we'll just leave it like this for now. Int index. Right? And I'm going to start in zero-based indexes, so I'll start at 0. So I will update the index, right? And once I'm done with index, I'll go ahead and increment it to the next one. So the next time through the loop, it's on the next spot in the words array. But then I need to figure out how to take this string called S and I want to do a split. So I can do a split. I have to tell it the separator that I want. In this case, it's a comma. These are comma separated values, right? So for the line, line, they're going to be strings. It's going to be an array of strings. Let's see, is it not liking that split? Make sure. I got my split right. So I got to figure out how to give it the right split. First, I have to figure out how to spell correctly. Let's see, separator, string separator. Let's see, I'm not quite getting it right. So let's go ahead and this is definitely a skill you need to get, which is it's okay to not know, but you want to know how to figure it out, right? You want to know, how can I go ahead and figure out something I don't know how to do? So, and often there's a lot of examples out there. So if you look here, these are my delimiters, and okay, so I was expecting a char array, I guess. Let's see, text split words. All right. It seems a little bit of overkill, but I think at some point I think I can give it a string, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. So if I wasn't doing a video, I would investigate more, but this way is going to be perfectly fine. But I'm just going to have the one delimiter, say that 4 times fast, of the comma, right? Let's see, so it seems to approve of that. Okay, so now I have line, which is going to take each string, which is composed, if you recall, looking at this guy, each line is composed of a number, then the description of what type of word it is, right? So, but I only need one of them. I need which one? So one, where does the index start? It starts at 0, and I need the second one, which is going to be at index 1. So this here, this load words, should in fact read in all the words, all the lines. Then it will create an array. Will then load into it the middle item into the words array. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and usually you can only add breakpoints. You have to have code at breakpoints, so I'm just going to do int something like this equals 0, something like that. Hopefully that'll let me there, just so I can add a breakpoint. Because what I want to do is run this code again and look at words and see if it actually contains now just the middle item, right? Startup's a little slow. All right, so now I get here. And now you can see I just have the middle item. Perfect, right? All right. So now I have this load words. But what I want to do is choose one of the words, right? So what I really need to do is set up the Hangman game. And in class I kind of did everything in one method. I'm going to be a little more streamlined and modular in this. I was going to try to go back and clean it up, but we ran out of time in class. So what I'm going to do is create a method. Again, as you're seeing this, methods are your friends. It breaks up your code into different parts. So let's see, set up word, set up word choice, right? Something like that. I don't like that name, but I'm going to live with it for now. I can always go back and refactor, right? So setup word choice is going to basically, if the person wants to play, they can start. The game will start in this state, but I'm going to want to do some things. Like, for instance, I'll reset the wrong guesses back to 0, right? If I set the wrong guesses back to 0, what else should I do? I should go ahead and set the image back to the 0 image, right? But then I also want to try to choose a word. So what kind of information is a word going to be? It's going to be a string, and then this is going to be the current word. I don't have it set to anything yet. But in my little setup thing here, I want to assign the word to something out of my word. Notice I have the S. But here I need to get an index. I have to randomly choose an index. I can do it in there if I want, but I'm not going to do it. I'll do it before it. So I'll say int guess index, and then I'm going to say, it turns out, is there a way to get random information, a random integer? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean, I do know, but let's pretend I don't. So random C# int, and we don't have to be really great at this. So let's go here. And again, it's okay to do this for one little item because you're going to integrate it into your project. As long as you're not copying someone's full code, you're just getting a single line to figure out, how do I do this? I don't know. This is fine. So it turns out there's this random generator item. And so we can use, we don't need anything fancy. We can do new random. And I'll show you something you can do. We can also we don't have to actually declare a variable and assign it to it. This is going to be an object in here, and then I can do stuff with it. Turns out I want to get next. If I look at next, returns a non-negative random number. So starts at 0 and goes forward. And it looks here, this is the max one. Do I know the maximum I want? And does that matter? And the answer is, if I go over the number of words I have, that could be a problem. So it turns out I can put in words. And is there a way for me to tell how many items are in words? Words is an array. Arrays have length. Right? So this right here will generate a random number So it uses random class. It creates a new random class. And then I'm going to use the next method and give it the length of words, which will generate a number from 0 to 2265 in this case. If I loaded a different number of items, if my file had less or more, it would know that number based on how many items were listed in the array. All right, so now hopefully if I run this code, it will reset wrong guesses, change the image back to the base image, which wrong guesses is at 0. It will then also create a word for me to guess. So I have to call this method. Where should I call it? Well, I know I'm going to want to set up every time I load the form. I might want to set up some other time, like if they want to reset the game. But for now, I can do that. But it would be nice to know, did that actually work? So let's go ahead and int temp. Right. I think it has to actually be runnable code. It'd be interesting to see. No, that lets me do that. Okay. Gives me a warning that this isn't used, but that's okay. So now, in my form load, it's going to load the words, and then it's going to choose one of them and do a little setup for me. Let's see. All right. It's thinking. It's thinking. Oh, so it's stopping there. That's okay. I was right. It does not stop at, this is not a runnable line of code. It doesn't do anything. So it's actually stopping at the next point it has. That's funny. The word it chose is choose, just randomly. Believe me, it was totally random. I wish I could have made it do that on purpose. So it chose choose. So now I've got a valid, something to guess at. I've got something to guess at. That's good. I can get rid of this int temp. Can I get a breakpoint there? Oh, good. All right. So it turns out you can put breakpoints at beginnings and ends of methods instead of having to do that temporary variable. Okay. So now I have a guess. But now what I want to do is allow the user to make a attempt to guess letters, right? Well, I've got some work, a lot of work to do before I can get to that point, right? Because what I need to do is right here, I need to tell them how many letters there are and that sort of stuff. So how do I display information? Well, your choice is fine. You could do label, you could do, lots of things. Initially, this should be, I'm going to turn auto size to false. Just so it's a nice there. That's good. And then I'll probably do some sort of 3D border. One of my students, Ryan, he likes the 3D border. Where's that? Border style, 3D, fix 3D. And then I should get rid of that text. And I'll change this. So this is going to be the view of the word, right? It's not going to be the actual word, because if I gave him the word, it'd be a pretty easy game, right? So what I need to do is display my word, but instead of the actual word, I want to do underscores, right? So what I need to do is create a copy of my word. And I actually need to keep track of what they got right and wrong, right? This is their copy of the word, right? And I'll need to every so often update it to match the current word. I need to replace it based on the items in the index, right? That they have guessed. So let's go ahead and create another method. which will let me update that copy of the word. And initially, that copy of the word I'll probably need to pass in a letter. And actually, maybe I'll do this here because I have to do it anyway because the guess is going to update the word. All right, so my what I call it, copy current is going to have the same number of items that's in current. So what I want to do is create a loop. I'm going to set current to, and then I'm going to use a loop to loop through and turn for int index equals 0. Is less than the length of current size. Right. And then I'm going to increment index. So this loop will run for the same, however many characters are in current. So what I want to end up in copy is the same number of underscores. Right? So I want copy to have the same number of underscores. So this right now is going to just run the same code over and over again. So what I do is plus equals, which will mean is it will run and add to copy current that number of items. Now, for reasons you'll become clear later, I'm going to want another method that will display copy to the screen. And it will be void again. And again, I'm going to have basically the same sort of loop. But what this will do is it will take the current copy and put it out to the, copy the letters out. Oops, that's not good. And this can be actually, I could actually use either one because they're both the same length, right? But I want that label, I call it label show word. I want it to be the same as that, but I want it to look a little nicer. So instead of having the, let's see, substring, another new method, is substring, which we want to grab each one of the letters here, whatever index I'm at the start index of index, and I'm going to go the whole way. Oh, I want to grab one at a time. Oh, and of course, what I want is it's telling me, it's complaining that, I'm trying to update a label. And of course, I don't want to update the whole label, right? I want to update just the text portion of the label, right? The text property. So I will go ahead and, so each character is going to get copied over one at a time, but then also I will add label show world again. I will add a extra space. And this will spread out my word a little bit more. So now I've got this nice little method to display my copy. So once I create it, I can go ahead and set up this display copy, which will, I get the guess, I then make a copy of the guess in length for these underscores, then I display it to the label. And we'll take a look and see what that looks like right now. So hopefully it doesn't blow up. We'll see. And there we go. Now, you can see it's kind of small. I think the user probably would appreciate it if it was a little bigger. So what I'll do is I'll take my label and I will adjust the font size. Of course, Times New Roman, of course, bold. Maybe, say, 24. That's probably too big. I also think I'll want to, let's see, I think I want to center this. Let's see. Text align. So I change the text align so that instead of being off to the left here, it'll have them in the center of my label. Okay, now I'm not seeing any underscores there, and it probably is because I have chosen a font that's too big. And one way to test this, if I can get back, so I can come back here and I will go ahead and throw in an underscore there, and you notice it's not showing up. So that's a way to test that. So let's go ahead and I choose too big a font always. Okay, still not responding. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now you can see the single dash is showing up. So now I can go ahead. I actually technically don't have to remove it, right? Because when I load the form, it'll automatically overwrite it for me. So let's go ahead and run this. All right. So now, that actually, mistake on my part. So now it's got the two dashes next to each other, and I'll show you why it does that. And if we come back in here, load words. So the reason is that when I do my display copy, I should always initialize it to an empty string. Otherwise, when I go to subsequent versions of this, that is the next time I display copy again, it will just keep adding to it. It'll add spaces and strings, so it'll double it up. So what I want to do is make sure I clear it and then redisplay it. So let's go ahead and double check that. There you go. I got rid of the double one in the front, which also would have been a bug later. PC is slow. All right. So now I'm loading words. I've got my setup. I'm displaying a copy. But I want to be able to guess, right? So now this is a little tricky because now all the buttons point to the same thing. So how do I know which one is which, right? Well, it turns out this sender here is the button, right? So I know it's a button because they're the only people I'm going to let use this method call. I could call it something like choice or something like this. Choice. As button. So this is taking this generic object and telling my code, oh, I know it's a button. Now, that can be dangerous if you're not sure of that. In this case, we know that the only thing we're going to set to click on this are going to be buttons, which means now I have access to the choice text, which is the text on the button, right? And I can do this. I can now find out, do I have a good guess or not? So if my original word, which I called current, right? So if my word current, which is that one of the words that I chose, contains this text, that means I'm going to have to do some processing. That means that's good, right? Because it means they guessed correctly. If they didn't, if it's not in there, then I want this to increase the wrong guesses. So if this text here, which is A, B, C, is in there, I want to go ahead and do some processing, which will change the display. And then if it wasn't, then I want the wrong guesses to increase and to change the image, right? So it'll do that stuff for me. All right. So now I have to figure out how to update my display string, right? Because now I know I found this text. So now I have to check to see if I have to update my copy, my copy, which contains the underscores, right? So where was it? Words, update copy, guest click. So this guy here, I now need to change to include the new characters that I discovered. So if I put in A and it's in the word, I want, instead of the underscore to show up, I want the actual A to show up. So I'm converting this temporarily over to this array of characters, which should be all the underscores the first time through anyway. And then I need to go through my current. I also want to I can do current dot to char array. And I'm going to find inside this array any matches. Oh, I'm putting the brackets in the wrong spot. That's not good. There we go. So now I've converted these over to arrays, and I'm going to spin through each character in find. So for int index equals 0, because indexes are 0 based. As long as the index is less than the size of find. Oh, excuse me. The length of find. Arrays have the length property, and I will increment at that point, right? Now I have a loop, and in the loop I want to know if I'm ever matching the text of choice, but I need to actually convert that over to a char. So this is a string, text is a string, so I can do things like char. Oh, element at. The element at, that's pretty slick. All right, element at. Element at 0. This char. All right, so now I have the specific item they guessed, A, B, C, D, and so forth. So now if find index is equal to the guess char, which is the one I'm getting basically off the button, then I want to change the copy, which I've stored in temp, at that index to that guess character. And once I've done all that hard work, now I want to store that back in my copy current. So I have to change copy current back into string, and this constructor, I can give it temp, which is the array I started with, but now it's been updated to change any character at the position that that letter was. It's a little convoluted, but let's see here. I only have A's and B's right now, so it's a little tricky to do this. But pretty much, let's save that. Okay, and let's run this. Hopefully we'll get an A or a B in the word. No, A didn't. Let's see, can we... all right, let's set a breakpoint. And our setup word choice. Nope. In our guess. Let's take a look. What we got here. All right, so let's go A. All right, so either A and B was in that word, unfortunately. I guess we can go ahead and bite the bullet at this point. got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. I think I got an extra, right? All right. Now, I could manually go in and change all those, but I'm very lazy, which good programmers are lazy. You'll find that out. So it turns out that that's kind of a little manual labor there, and it's still manual labor, but you can go over here to initialize components. This is where it creates them, and you can see CDMA, B, C. I hope I got them in the right order. D, E. Let me double check the design view. Oh, A, B, C. I missed one. A, B. Let's see. Maybe it's more trouble than it's worth. Should have paid a little more attention when I was. C, D, E. Well, we'll look at this. F. I'm not sure which is worth manually doing each button or moving the buttons around. So I could have technically looked at the positions and figured it out, but not going to do it. In O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. All right, so I hopefully have all the buttons now. C, A, B, C. Let's see. E, F. Looks like they were a little backwards there. You're close. P, rearrange them a little bit. They don't actually have to be in the correct order for our game to work, but the user probably would appreciate that. U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay. Let's try to center them up a little better. There we go. All right. So now I can maybe give this a shot. Let's see. So now the temp contains the spaces. Copy current. Oh, let's look at this. You can see it's replaced the A, so that's good. So it is replacing them. But what I need to do now is, that's why I made that little method to actually display the copy. So that after I update it, I can go ahead and update its view. That way the user will see it. So now let's go ahead and restart this. And it's a long word. Not get much traction there. So let's take a look. Display copy. I'll set a breakpoint there. Oh, came in there. All right, let's take a look. So the A is going to display the copy, which should call this method here, which should simply just put that out there. Oh, and it did. All right. So seems to be partially. Oh, I know one of the things I didn't do. So I created all these buttons, and only A and B actually are hooked up properly. And I need to include all these buttons and set them to the same event, right? Remember I did that with A and B way at the beginning. Events aren't automatically included when you transfer over properties, but I can come in here and do that. So now it should have added that to all of those. That's why they weren't firing. They were basically not associated with any event to handle them. All right, so and there's my C. Let's see if I can. I lost. All right. So another thing I'm going to want to do is each time I make a guess, I want to disable. What do you? Okay, so the we want to disable each of these buttons. I'm going to take enabled and set it to false. That way, when they make a guess, it'll turn off that opportunity for a guess, so they won't re-click the same button. The last thing we need to do is, if they successfully check the word and find it correctly, we can tell them they won. So we can take copy current and check to see if it equals current, and if it does, we will change the label to you win. Right. Right. And to do this quickly, I'm going to go ahead and when they choose the word, that is when they load, when they do the setup, I'm going to figure out what the word is right here. I'm going to find out what current is so I can test whether or not that works. So current is SA. So let's see. Oops. And I won. So both the losing and the winning works. The last thing you might want to do is allow them to restart. And if we look at this, what has to happen for them to restart? We have to set up the word choice again. And we probably should also reset that label to nothing, right? All right. So that means that at any time they should be able to restart. So charity is the word. So C H A R I There we go. And I went. If I hit this, it'll reset it. But one of the things it won't do is fix these buttons yet. So there you can see it's going back to the word again. And you can see the buttons haven't been reset. So there is an easy way to do that. You can get a list of all the controls. I think controls. I think I could say something like 4 button in this .controls, and then go through and reset the enabled to true. I would leave that for you to do. That's it for today. So this was 2 class periods, so it's kind of long. So good luck with your Hangman game.